Hey all, hello and welcome, Tony Bing here. For this beginner's guide video we will have a look at the Queen of Limbo herself, Magik. Now in this video we will have a look at her primary attributes and offensive and defensive traits. We'll check out some of her costumes, we'll have a look at her signature and ultimate, and at the end we'll actually do 3 different gameplay run-throughs and they'll show off the sword side of things, her sorcery skills, and then finally we'll focus on all the summons that you can actually see going crazy just now on the Sentinels, which is pretty awesome looking. But first off, we'll start off by looking at the primary attributes and the offensive and defensive traits. So we start off here by looking at her offensive trait, and that is the Soul Sword. Now with this, you gain summon ally damage, 25%. Her archetype is Blaster, and that means she gains bonus damage from the fighting and energy attributes. Now with fighting, providing the crit rate and multiplier, that will be the attribute that you'll be looking to stack. For the defensive trait we have Eldritch Armour. Now with this one, she has life on hit, the archetype is tough, and she gains a multiplier to both defense and deflect, and she also has the 8% damage reduction on melee attacks as well there. No special resource to look out for in Magik, she just uses spirit as a lot of heroes do, nothing really different in that respect. So with that out of the way, let's now have a look at some of her costumes. First costume we look at is her default, and that's a Marvel Now costume, and it really does look pretty fantastic. We then have the Phoenix Force costume, and now with the Flaming Sword, her sorcery attacks also gain a flame visual as well, and we'll show that off later on in the video. Final costume we look at is the New Mutants costume, and as you can see she's got another unique sword here, this one with a nice blue silvery glow. It does look really great. Now on the subject of things that look great, let's have a look at the signature and ultimate. For the signature we have a large area sorcery attack, and this is called Otherworldly Nova. Now with this it will do mental damage. It applies a damage dot of a skill called Soul Brand that we'll look at later on, and it also regenerates 40% of your health and spirit. So if you have a high spirit pool, that can give you enough sustain, that 40%. Now as you can see, when you're wearing a default costume, you've got the nice blue glow visual, and then we'll show off the Phoenix Force costume, and you can see on this one we've got all the flame visuals for it, so that really does look great. But let's now have a look at the ultimate skill. For the ultimate we have a skill called Dark Child, and with this you actually transform into what's known as the Dark Child, which is a demonic powerful version of Magik. With it you'll gain a mental damage dot, you gain a huge buff to your damage rating, your crit hit damage, your brutal strike damage, you also regenerate a load of health, and your defense and deflect go way up as well. So it's a really powerful steroid attack, and as you can see as well, it looks pretty awesome. And while she's in this particular transformation, she can actually cast all her skills as well, so you can do a whole lot of damage during this. But what we're going to do now is do some gameplay run throughs, and there's actually 3 different ones we'll do. The first one we'll look at will be the sword based skills. So for this preview of the melee skills, we'll actually run through the shocker terminal here. Now if we look at the main spender from the melee side of things, that would be Soul Cleaving, and with this you will do bonus damage to enemies under the effective Soul Brand. That's a skill we've already mentioned, and we'll look at it in the next section of this video. The next skill we look at is Sorceress Eruption. Just cast that there and it looks pretty great. This has got a 2-second immobilize. It also has weaken on it as well, which is really nice and especially useful for melee builds to pull down the damage of any enemies. We then have Step to Me. This is nice. With this it will stun the enemy and it pulls them towards you as well. So for melee builds, if the enemy's running away from you, quickly fire this off, pull them back to you, they'll be stunned, and then follow it up with the next skill, which is 7 League Step, and that will do 4 hits as you fly around the screen hitting them. And this also has invulnerability as well, so it can actually be a useful skill if an enemy is about to fire off a particularly hard attack. You can actually use this. There we go, we can see I've just used it there. Next skill anyway, this one would be Soul Sever. So with this you'll teleport behind the enemy and you use your soul sword to cleave them asunder, as it says. So with this, it's an execute, and it will do bonus damage based on how much health the enemy's actually missing. So you want to save this until you've whittled them down, and then fire it off, and you'll do a whole lot of damage there. Now the final skill we look at, it's not necessarily a melee one, but it falls under the first tree where the rest of the melee skills are, and this is called Soul Shockwave. So it will do mental damage, and it actually pierces the enemies. The more enemies it pierces, the damage on it is actually reduced, but you can buff this through talents, and it gains a cooldown, and it gains a huge effect as well. But let's now fire off all these skills all together on Shocker to take them down. You can see 7 League Step there. And then there was a Sorcerous Eruption for the weaken on him. And we could see 7 League Step once again, yeah. This is taking slightly longer than some of the other beginner's guides videos I have actually shown. Don't worry about the damage perspective of her, because before I do these videos I don't min-max the gear at all. I just really put on the gear I would need to get through the particular level. So don't worry about that in respect, just look at the skills, don't worry too much about the damage. But let's shock her down anyway. So what we'll do next is we'll look at the range side of things, and this would be your sorcery skills, and we'll start to throw in a few summons as well in this next preview. So now for the Kingpin's Warehouse, we'll show off the ranged side of things, and we'll throw in a couple of summon skills as well. Now the main spender that I'm using, that's Spirit Fangs, and you can see with the Phoenix Force costume that the visuals of it actually are the same as the sword. You've got the fiery glow to them, so it really does look really nice. Now with this particular skill, it's actually buffed by damage of summon powers, so this really is the skill that you want to use if you're going for a summon build. We then have Soul Brand. This is a skill we've mentioned a few times earlier on in the video, and this one, it applies slow, vulnerability, and enemies affected by it, when you hit them you also regenerate 200 health and restore free spirit as well. So it's a really nice skill, and one you most definitely want as part of your kit, regardless if you're ranged or melee. We then have the summons, and we look at the first one, which is the small demons you summon, and that's Command Lesser Demons. So when you activate the skill, it will call them in. When you activate it again, it actually directs them to leap towards targets and attack them. And that's the same for, I'm not sure how you would say this, but Command Fist of, we'll call him Astery. I'll go for that. I'm sure that's not how you say it at all, but that's what I'll call it. And that's the big huge hulking demon you can see. He's really nice at tanking, so he goes perfect with a range build. And again, once you click his skill, you'll summon him, click it again, and he'll do a high damage cooldown attack. We then have Vengeful Spirits. That's a skill I've just fired off there when you've seen all the ghosts fly off me. Now with this, as you actually attack enemies, you gain these, and then once you get a full stack of them, you can fire it off and they do a nice bit of damage as well. This is also buffed through summon powers damage, so it works great on a summon build. The final skill we look at is a nice utility one, and I do find again this works great on a range build, and this is Bone Wall. So you throw this up, it blocks enemy pathing, and it also does damage reduction as well there for any attacks that go through it. So we can see we're using it now to block the attacks from Dr. Octopus. There we go. I really do like skills like this. As much as space on your actual bar is valuable, a skill like this can really help you out. But that's Dr. Octopus down there, nice and easy. So what we'll do for this final section, we'll show off one more costume, and we'll actually show off the remaining summon skills. For this final run through, we'll take on Taskmaster and show off more of our actual summon skills here. So the first one we look at, that's the Command Lesser Bile Demons, and that's essentially the range version of the smaller melee demons we've seen in the last stage. We then have that name that I can't say once again, Command Neastra, I'm going for. Please do let me know in the comments below how I should actually pronounce it. But with this, you can see you've got the big green demon with the wings, and he looks pretty awesome, and he can do a mental damage dot when you press the skill to cast him again. There you go, you can see that just there going off. It's got quite a big range on it as well. Now, something I'll just mention quickly that you can see on screen, with this costume when I'm using Spirit Fangs, you can see it's got the bluey silver glow to it. That's opposed to the orangey red glow we had when we were wearing the Phoenix Force costume. The next skill we actually look at, this is another summon one, and this is Dark Alliance. So with this, you'll summon 2 lesser demons. They actually absorb damage, and while they are out and active, you gain a 25% bonus damage rating as well. So that's really nice. Now the last skill we look at is a summon one, and the way this works is enemies that are actually non-robotic, you can enslave them. So what you do, you find an elite which you want to use, you'll take them down using this skill. Once you've done that, you've then enslaved them, and when you cast the skill again, you'll call them from limbo to fight for you. So we'll show this off just as we go up against Taskmaster. We've got everyone called in, so this should look pretty great. There we go. You can see that minion that we've called back from limbo there. So you can get a whole lot of summons, as you can see, so really quite fun. Let them do a bulk of the damage there just to show off how much they can actually do. And then we'll finish off doing attacks with Magik as well as our summons as well. There we go, that's her done, and we've got a good variety of summons there you can actually see that she's got. So she's really got some quite different builds, and she's a lot of fun. You also have the visual costume aspect of her where you can change how her skills look, so that's really pretty fun as well. So it's a nice good one to cover here. Next up, I think potentially I might do Moon Knight, because I've had a few requests for him. So if there is anyone else anyway you would like me to cover, do let me know. And really thanks for tuning in for another one of these videos, and I'll see you all again soon.